Hello everybody, this is Manu S and welcome to a new video. Today I got something a little special and different for you guys. I wanted to talk to you guys about the new upcoming card game from Valve called Artifact, designed by the original Magic creator Richard Garfield. So the game has a lot of promising potential already from those facts. One of the biggest and most innovative game developers of all time, Valve, combined with the most innovative card game designer of all time, the person that basically invented the modern TCG, Richard Garfield, with Magic in 1993. So those two have teamed up to bring us hopefully what will be a new revolution of digital card games with Artifact coming this year. And I scoured the internet for all info that I could find on Artifact to bring you everything that we know so far and what I think about it and how the game works and so on. So let's dive right in and start with the basics. Okay, so these are the 4 colors in the game. So let's start at the beginning. So the game has 4 colors, as we can see here: green, blue, red, and black. They also make up the logo, as we just saw in the small teaser that Valve put out. So it's less colors than we used to from Magic or Eternal, for example. And from what I heard on the internet, they are sort of modeled after classic D&D classes or refer to certain groups of MOBA classes. So the green color, the green heroes, are support and jungle characters. The blue heroes, the blue color, is spellcasters, so basically magic damage carries. And red stands for tanks, bruisers, that sort of stuff, or in D&D terms would be something like a barbarian. And last but not least, we have black, which stands for the assassin type characters or sort of rogues, that kind of stuff. The more, tricky kind of heroes, which is also reflected in the spells and abilities. So the way the game works is you have a deck of 40 cards. They are mostly spells, but from what I could learn, there are also certain minions that you can put in your deck aside from the creeps in the game. I'll talk about that later when we take a look at some gameplay footage. So your deck consists of 40 cards minimum. Can be as many cards as you want, but as we all know, it's going to be 40 because any extra card reduces your probabilities of drawing a good cards. Each hero brings a signature ability, a signature spell with them. So every hero that you choose, it automatically adds a playset of their signature ability, their signature spell to the deck, which in this case means 3, since a playset in Artifact will be 3 copies of a card. So the first 15 cards of your deck are already set, and the other 25 cards you can put in all sorts of other stuff. Obviously, cards that have the colors of your heroes. The colors that you can choose for a deck range from 1 to all 4, from what I found. So you can play 4-color decks or monocolor decks. That's up to you. But in order to be able to play a certain spell or ability, you need a hero of the given color. So I'm not sure if you could theoretically put green cards in a deck without a green hero, but even if you could, it would be pointless because you cannot play them. The other thing is you have an additional deck of 9 item cards that you will have access to in the shopping phase, which I will also explain later during checking out some gameplay footage together. So they are not part of your initial deck, and a deck comes with 5 heroes, so you choose 5 heroes for your deck, which are also not part of the 40 cards of your deck. So your deck is basically 40 cards of your actual deck that you play with and draw cards from each turn. 5 heroes, and a 9-card item deck. They are all three are like separate from each other. Let's take a look at the structure of these cards. So what you see here is left we have the attack stat, which we are mostly used to from all sorts of card games by now. On the right we have the health or life or toughness or whatever you want to call it. In this game it's probably also going to be called health from what I've seen. Like from item cards it's called health, so it's kind of like an Eternal. And in Eternal this is called strength if I'm not mistaken, but here I think it's called attack. What you see up here are the 3 item slots. I already mentioned there is a 9-card item deck that you bring, and you can buy items in a shopping phase that I will explain in detail later. This is a weapon slot, an armor slot, and a sort of health accessory slot. So stuff that gives you additional attack goes here, stuff that gives you hero armor goes here, and stuff that gives you a hero additional health goes here. Health just works like in Hearthstone. Damage is permanent, so it doesn't disappear at the end of turn. If your hero takes 4 damage, their health goes down to 6 and stays that way unless you do something that heals them or whatever. It doesn't heal automatically at the end of turn. Armor works a bit different. As we can see, this hero has armor naturally. Armor works kind of like damage mitigation. So if this hero would take 5 damage, he would only take 3, because it's the damage minus the armor. So 2 armor means he takes 2 damage less from every damage source that he takes. What I also found out is that you can have negative armor, so you can have like -2 armor, which would then mean a hero would take +2 damage from every source that he takes damage from. Not sure how it's with attack, if you can also have negative attack, and if that would mean you heal opposing stuff. I kind of doubt it's going to be like that, but I'm not entirely sure. And yeah, that what you can also see here is basically the signature spell, the signature ability of the character that is automatically in your deck as a playset. Not sure why we can see additional text here and here, but not on this copy. Either it's because you have to mouse over to see this, and this wasn't moused over. Not sure if this just doesn't have an ability. It's like a very basic hero maybe to show something off and doesn't have a signature ability card, or how it works, but somehow this doesn't have one here. Here we can see it again. We can also see that the health has a different color, so that means this hero has taken damage, so the initial health is higher than 5. Same here. The color is different. This one is orange, this is red, so this might mean that this has taken more damage relative to the starting health than this has. Maybe this is like a 6/6 and this is like a, I don't know, 3/9 or something, and that's why that is. What we see here, this -2, does not mean I'm not 100% sure what the -2 here means, because that would imply that it's like a permanent -2 to the health, but it's weird because this is like an item slot, so I'm not 100% sure what this means. But normally what these -2 numbers in red here mean usually are, which we will see later during the gameplay, they give you an indication of the damage and the change the unit is about to take when combat happens, because you do a lot of things before combat and then the combat just automatically happens and you get a projection of what will happen during combat. And normally with these minus numbers in all the places where the changes happen, from like abilities and combat itself. And yeah, your heroes work in the sense that the first 3 heroes of your deck are deployed, if I got that correctly, in the left, middle, and right lane in order of 1, 2, 3, I think, at the beginning of the game. Not sure if you get to pick which of your 5 heroes goes in which lane and which 3 of the 5, because only 3 of your 5 heroes start out in play, and the other 2 you can deploy in the second turn. But let's just take a look at some gameplay to see for ourselves. Okay, so Here we have some gameplay footage. See the beginning of the game. Sorry, the quality is as bad as it is. There were the 5 heroes on each side, so you see what heroes your opponent has. And it seems that the heroes were deployed from left to right, 1, 2, 3, as suspected. This is the hero we saw in the game before. Let's pause here for a second. So what we also can see is starting hand size is 5, starting mana is 3, starting health is 40. So the game works in a way that you have 3 lanes, basically top lane, middle lane, and bot lane. And each lane has its own mana pool of 3 starting mana and 40 starting health, basically representing a tower here and here. And each turn you draw 2 cards at the beginning of the turn, so more than we are used to from most games. So you get 2 new cards each turn, and plus 1 mana. There is no limit to hand size, and there's no limit to how much mana you can get. So if the game lasts 100 turns, you have 103 mana, not like, for example, in Hearthstone where it's capped at 10. And there's also no maximum board size, which we also know from Eternal. Hearthstone, like Hearthstone has a maximum board size of 7, Eternal has a maximum board size of 12. This game has no maximum board size. You can have 100 things on one side. And that, from what I've seen and heard and read online, is something that can actually happen. Okay, so as you can see, at the beginning of the game, there are 2 cards put on the board in each lane face down. One is the hero, and one is a creep. As we can see here, this is a typical melee creep. That's, as far as I know, the only kind of creep that standard exists in the game. It's a 2/4 creep normally. This has a buff. I assume this hero gives a buff to it somehow. So here you can see this is the unbuffed normal creep. It has 2 attack and 4 health, and each lane starts with 1 of these melee creeps and 1 hero, and both are positioned face down randomly, so both players don't know how they are positioned until the game starts. They could have been like swapped, so it could be like that this hero is facing this minion and the other way around. Here you see the combat projections. This would deal 4 here, this would take 2 from this, and so on. This would take 4, this would take 8. So you get an idea what would happen if you would go to combat now. So another thing that is important, the objective of the game is to either destroy 2 towers, so deal 40 damage in 2 different lanes. The alternative is kill the tower in 1 lane, then the tower gets replaced with an ancient that has 80 health, and then you kill that ancient and you can also win. So you either deal 120 damage in 1 lane to the tower and then the ancient, or you deal 40 damage to 2 towers in 2 different lanes. That's the only way to win a game that I know of so far. Let's continue. So here we see the player doesn't have any things he can do. That's important, since, as I said earlier, you can only use cards in a lane that have the color of the heroes in the lane. So this lane has a green hero, or if his cards are blue. So all of those cards cannot be played in this lane. He has 1 green card, but that costs 5 and he only has 3 mana, so he has no play in this lane. But I'll show you how that looks and what happens when you play stuff in a moment. So let's take a look. So since he can't do anything here, he's just gonna go to combat, and then the opponent goes to combat as well. So it's kind of like a, that's another important thing. As you saw, the turn sort of happens simultaneously. Like, one of the 2 players has priority, has initiative, so he gets to act first. And if he doesn't want to do anything, you press the gold button, the gold coin, pass to your opponent. Then if your opponent doesn't want to do anything as well, they pass back to you, and then you go on to the next step, which is in that case combat, and then you automatically go to the next lane. Important to note here is that the person that had the initiative on the last board, last did something on the last board, won't have initiative on the next board. So if you have the initiative on a board, you don't do anything, then your opponent also doesn't do anything, means your opponent will have the initiative on the board, on the next board, on the next lane. But that also means if you do something and your opponent doesn't do something, they will get the initiative. But on the other hand, if you do nothing, pass to your opponent does something, passes back to you, you decide not to do anything, goes to the next lane, you get the initiative. So it's always in order, like the person that did something last on the last board is the person going second on the next lane, from what I understand. Okay, let's continue. We have these little gremlins, they are pretty cute but not relevant to the game, they just kind of carry the deck from lane to lane and do animation type stuff. Here we have the next board, we see the combat protections. This means the creep, or in this case hero, would die if combat happens the way it is right now. Here the opponent has options, because as we can see, 4 blue cards, one costs 2, one costs 3, so there are 2 cards that the player could play in this lane, and he chose to play a card that deals 2 damage and disarms the hero for a turn, or the unit for a turn, because it could also be played on a creep. Chose to play it on a hero. Disarm means that, as you can see now, this one wouldn't die anymore, because disarm means the disarmed unit does not deal damage in the next combat, like 0 damage. So the attack is basically disabled for 1 turn by disarming, and also dealt 2 damage, so lost 2 health, and there's like an animation that shows how disarm works. And now the player is done, gonna press the button, because he has no more mana. Opponent has no play either, and then combat happens. Then we are on to the third lane. Same situation again, green hero, only 1 playable blue spell, and a green spell that is too expensive. And as you can see, the opponent has priority, because the last one that had an action on the last board was the person we are looking at, or us basically. So now the opponent gets to act first. Opponent chooses to do something that they can use in a different lane, as you saw. That is sort of one of the things of the rogue or assassin type color. They are more able to mess with other lanes, so they can play cards in their own lane that affect another lane. As you saw here, the assassin chose to play a card that affected the first lane and dealt 2 damage to the hero in the first lane to finish off that hero, instead of affecting the own lane. And as we saw, 1 mana got subtracted, so the mana cost still is paid in the lane that the card is used in, but the effect of the card is on another lane, not on the own lane. So it's kind of like ganking a lane, or like an assassin attack on another lane, basically. Right. And then we get priority since we don't have a play, pass priority back, and then combat happens. Or rather, priority goes back to the opponent. Opponent plays something else, another card for 1 to affect another lane, and not sure what this small thing is, I couldn't figure out what that is. And as you can see, priority goes back and forth, so we had no play, passed back, they got another play, now the priority goes back to us. We once again have no play, we pass, priority goes back to the opponent, opponent has no play, passes as well, combat happens. So it's kind of like we know from Magic, priority goes back and forth, and we have a phase switch as soon as both players pass once doing nothing. So if we do nothing, opponent gets a chance to do something. If they do something, we get a chance to do something again and react, and back and forth. That happens for as long as we both say, okay, I have no play, and the opponent says, I have no play. Then, as we can see, the laning phase basically ends, and then that's the end of the first turn, which gets us to the shopping phase at the end of the turn, which opens this small shop. And to explain that real quick, there are 3 types of items, 3 slots basically that you can buy from. These are like special items that have nothing to do with your item deck. They are just high cost, high power items, and there's like a whole bunch of them. You can check them in the game at some point. We don't know all the items now, and you always get shown one of those each turn. It's always a different one, it's always a random one. So if you chose to not buy this time, next shopping phase there might be another premium item here. In the middle, you get a chance to buy one of your 9 items from the item deck. You can see here item deck 9 out of 9. Not sure if your item deck has to be 9 items or can be less. I would assume it has to be 9. You could control which items you can buy, because you're always shown 1 out of the 9. Of course, if you buy one, it's 1 out of 8 and so on, until you bought all 9. So you can affect the probability of which item you get by buying some of your own items. And on the right side, we have consumables. There's a bunch of consumables in the game, and you always get one random consumable that you can buy, and it also changes each shopping phase. And yeah, the items here, down below you see what the item does if it has a special ability. In this case we see a blink dagger, and there we see the ability of the blink dagger. From what I know, very popular item in Dota, so that's something a lot of people will recognize. And you can buy multiple items from each of these piles basically in a turn if you have enough gold. Like you can buy this consumable. If you buy this, it gets replaced with another random consumable from the consumable deck, or like the consumable selection. So you can buy this in the hopes of getting the chance to buy a specific consumable that you want that comes after this, for example. Or you can buy the blink dagger from your item deck, and then the item that comes below to try and sort of get to an item in your item deck that you want in a specific situation, for example. So you can buy until you hit what you want, or until you're out of gold, for example. And the same applies here, although it's a lot harder because these items are very expensive. As you can see, this costs like 15 gold. Quickly explaining how you get gold. Basically, if an enemy creep dies, you get 1 gold. If an enemy hero dies, you get 5 gold. That's how you generate gold. And there are cards and ways that manipulate gold gain. So there's also ways to get additional gold from like cards that you can play and stuff. But normally 1 gold per creep and 5 gold per hero. Okay, so the shopping phase, you can choose to spend gold, but you don't have to. You can just press the button if you don't want to spend any gold. And like I said, you can buy multiple cards from one pile. If you buy the blink dagger, you will get another one. You get a chance to buy another one, another out of the 8 items from your item deck that are left, and so on. And also with the choices left and right. And also keep in mind, if you don't buy the consumable or like powerful equipment that you are shown this shopping phase, next shopping phase, there will probably be another consumable and another item. They might return later because it's random. It's always the chance to see the same item twice, or see an item that you saw earlier a couple turns later, but it's not guaranteed. Like you cannot see this the first shopping phase and then be like, okay, I'll save towards this and buy this in like 3 turns, because in 3 turns it might be another item. Okay, let's continue. Then the laning phase begins. As you saw, the little gremlin gave us 2 cards, the 2 cards you draw each turn, and then the deployment phase begins. Each deployment phase there are 2 melee creeps that are deployed, and any heroes that you have left can be deployed in a lane. So if a hero dies, we saw this hero died and this hero died in the first turn, then they have to sit out for 1 turn. So you cannot put them back in play on turn 2, but you get the chance to redeploy them on turn 3. There's one exception. There is, I think, at least one green hero that has an ability called Rapid Deployment. That means they don't have the 1 turn cooldown after they get killed. They can just immediately redeploy. So if the hero with Rapid Deployment would have been killed in turn 1, you can just put it in one of the lanes again in turn 2 instead of turn 3 like other heroes. Also important, 2 creeps spawn each turn, but in which lane they spawn is random. As you can see here, the 2 creeps both spawn in the top lane, basically in the left lane, but they could also be one spawning in the top lane and one in the bottom lane, or both in the mid lane. They don't have to spawn together, and they spawn randomly, so you have no control over where they spawn. With heroes, it's different. As you can see, they are not deployed randomly, but you also during the deployment phase see where the opposing minions will spawn, so you can use that information to choose where you want to put your heroes. And I think there's also an initiative priority type thing going on here. So you choose your hero while you get to choose in which lane you put them. Like you can put them in one of the 3 lanes. You cannot control where in the lane they spawn. So like if you put this hero in this lane, it could spawn right or left. You have no control over that. It's a coin flip. I'm not even sure if there's other positions, like if it could spawn further away. And like if you have, for example, a hero and 2 creeps coming into this lane, there's no saying in what order they will be, like creep, hero, creep, or like hero, creep, creep. Any combination is possible. Okay, so here we see the deployment phase. We choose to put the green hero here and the blue hero here. That means 2 creeps and a hero deploy here. We don't see where our opponent is deploying the hero until the end of a deployment phase. I think it works the way that both players don't see where the heroes are deployed. You only see what your opponent is deploying, and you only see where the creeps deploy, and the heroes you only see until after at the end of the deployment phase when you see where they are deployed. Another important thing here is cards, the laning cards. Let me explain these real quick. Normally, as we saw, combat works the way that a unit, like a hero or a creep, attacks the thing in front of them automatically. But if there's nothing in front of them, they would theoretically attack the tower, but not necessarily. Because if there's nothing in front of them, there will be like a random lane card, and they have these turns. They can be straight ahead. If they're straight ahead, they just attack straight, which means if there's nothing in front, they hit the tower. But if there's like one of these bends, that means they might attack diagonally. Like for example, if there's a creep here and nothing in front, and then you have one of these lanes, they would, instead of attacking the tower, attack the creep here. I'm not sure if they can divert away from the tower, basically making the attack go into nothing. That's something that I'm not sure about yet. And these cards, there are various versions of these cards, and they are randomly placed in the spots where there's no opposing creep or hero. Okay, let's continue. We can, as you saw, there were some on the opposing side as well. All the cards are randomly placed in the lane, and then they are revealed. And as you saw, the 2 creeps spawned here and the hero here. We have the combat projections. We get to draw the 2 cards for the turn. Opponent used the spell. Then it's our turn, so the priority goes back and forth. We have 4 mana now. And we have more options because we have a blue hero here now and a couple of blue cards. And everything that costs 4 or less we can theoretically use. There's a card, for example, that spawns 3 creeps. So let me show that to you. Like I said. Okay, so this is important. So first of all, there's a card that can make creeps. So that's what I talked about. There are ways that you can create creeps with cards that you can put in your deck. So you not only have spells, you also have cards that make creeps. And here you see there are no enemies in front of these creeps, so there are 3 lane cards. One is straight, so the one in the middle gets to attack the tower. The one on the right attacks the thing that would be here, but if there's nothing here, I would assume it also gets to attack the tower. And this one also is diverted to attack the thing diagonally from it, but since there's nothing, I would assume it also attacks the tower. So in this case, all 3 still attack the tower. But for example, if this would face the other way around and would be here, this minion, this creep, instead of attacking the tower, would also attack this hero. So let's see. Opponent makes a play. We get priority again, we pass. Opponent gets priority again. Opponent makes a play, uses an item that they bought in the shopping phase, equips it to the hero. We get priority again. That's another thing that's important. The items you buy just go to your hand like regular cards, and then you can just choose to play them like regular cards in a lane. They don't cost any mana, so don't be worried, they do not use up any of your mana, but you have them in your hand until you equip them to a hero in a lane, basically. Then combat happens, as we saw. The creeps that have been diverted all dealt damage to the tower, so the tower took 6. So the ones that were diverted to the side but still didn't hit anything else eventually hit the tower. So that proves that attacks cannot fizzle, like you cannot just whiff your attack and deal damage to nothing. Like at the worst you just attack sideways. If sideways still is nothing and means tower, you eventually go tower. Then we're on to the next lane again. Combat projections, the opponent has 2 heroes and 2 creeps in the lane. We have 1 creep and 1 hero. The damage projections are important to remind you where the attacks will go because of the lane cards that we saw earlier, and you see these arrows here that show where something is attacking. Like for example, you can see the arrow here is not facing straight, so this is not going to attack our tower. It's facing diagonally, which means it is going to attack this creep because the lane card that was rolled here was one with the sideward, with a curve towards here. And that's why the combat projections are helpful and important, because it's hard to keep track of all the directions and things that could happen. So this gives you a clearer idea what's going to happen. So you see this would take 8. 2 from the minion across and 6 from the hero to the side that has to attack diagonally. Then there's a blue spell used here. That spell made 2 allies in your lane switch the position. Every time something new spawns, you get this lane card in front, and this spawned like a 4/2 minion instead of a 2/4, a creep. Opponent used another equipment they bought. So there are cards that let you control positions. While the positioning is random initially, there are cards that allow you to change positioning. Or change attack direction and stuff like that. Okay, so that's the last lane, and that's the end of the gameplay footage. That concludes the overview. That's all the info that I have so far. I think the game looks very intriguing. There is a lot of complexity to it. The infos that we have are Valve already announced that there will be a $1 million prize pool tournament in 2019, fairly early in the game's history, similar to what they did with Dota 2 when they released it. So they are clearly aiming for competitive gameplay and esports and a tournament circuit. As you can see, the game also looks pretty complicated, so they are not too concerned with making it as casual friendly as possible, but rather as kind of like strategically intriguing and skill intensive as possible. The amount of variance that we saw is reasonably controllable and predictable variance, the kind of good variance, as Richard Garfield would say. If you want to learn a bit more about Richard Garfield and his opinions on the relationship between skill and variance in card games, there is a really cool presentation that you can find on YouTube where he talks almost an hour about the relationship between skill and variance in games, and in card games specifically. It's really cool and really insightful in my opinion. So the other important thing that I want to touch on in the end is this game has two major differences to all the card games that we know right now. First of all, it won't be free to play. The game will be like Magic sort of. So you buy the base game, get a bunch of base cards. By the way, the first set is already known to have a size of 280 individual cards and 44 additional individual heroes. So basically 322 cards in total. 280 cards for deck building. I think that includes items, so for your regular deck and your item deck, and 44 cards to choose for your 5 heroes that you your deck. And you have booster packs that you also buy for probably only real money. Not sure if there will be also some kind of grindable in-game currency, so you can still buy packs sort of for free by grinding, but I would assume that you probably can't. I would assume that the game will work similar to what we know from Magic Online, where it's like playing a card game in paper. You have to buy everything, but everything also has value. There will be in-client trading, and the cards will be buyable and sellable on the Steam market. Since that's the other big deal, the card will not be a CCG, it will be a classic TCG. It will be a trading card game, not one with a craft system and where your cards are locked to your account. It will work just like paper Magic or Magic Online. You can trade or sell all the cards you open, which gives them a permanent value, and you can always just kind of opt out of the game by just selling everything and redeeming a lot of the money you put in. The other info that we have already is that there will both be sealed and draft formats in which you get to keep the cards you open, so there's another way to get cards. So there will be heavy limited support in the classic formats that we know from Magic and from Richard Garfield. There will be regular drafts. We have no information about how draft works in this game. We have no information of the size of a booster or prices of the base game or booster. All these informations are all these things are completely unknown for now. For sealed, obviously. That they will make sure that the cards will retain their value for years to come. So we have no idea how that's going to look, if they will find ways to do very slow rotations, or if they just do regular rotations but already have plans for extended formats, bigger formats, where you can play your old cards that will be relevant. And another important thing that they have said is there will be massive tournament support. There will be a spectator mode where you can have the same kind of in-depth spectator experience that you know from other Valve games. So you will not just be able to see what the player you are spectating is seeing. You will be able to look through both players' decks and all that sort of stuff. It will be a very in-depth and immersive kind of spectator mode where you can check all sorts of things that even the players cannot see. So that's pretty cool, and that will also work for major tournaments, so you can just spectate major tournaments from the client. You don't need to watch them on Twitch or anything. You can just watch big matches, high-ranked matches that are going on through the client, just like you know it from, for example, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. And there will be an in-client tournament support, basically from the beginning, once the game is fully out, from what I heard. And yeah, there's like an automated tournament thing where you can just join and it puts you in a tournament, and then you can just play tournaments, probably for prizes, for like packs and stuff, the same way we know from Magic Online, to build your collection and expand the card pool you have for deck building and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, this is completely different from everything else we have in the digital card game world, and much more resembling what we know from Magic Online. And it's going to be pretty interesting and cool to see that as like from like a big mainstream digital card game, because Magic Online is definitely not meant to have mainstream appeal. It's just meant to provide a digital version of the exact paper Magic experience for people to play paper Magic online, but without any regards to the difference in medium and stuff. It's just a carbon copy of paper Magic in a way, in every aspect, including the economy. And seems like that's something they are aiming for here. Gonna see how it works out. Curious. One important thing at the end regarding the TCG and not free-to-play aspect, something they said is they made sure that there is no sort of pseudo pay-to-win, in the sense that the higher the rarity of a card is, the more powerful it will be in the game, so that you basically need to buy lots of rares and mythics or legendaries or whatever they will be called to build competitive decks. There will be plenty of very powerful, constructed, relevant commons, so that the rarity is more like a thing that is detached from card power level, so probably kind of like unique and special cards that might not even be that powerful or that constructed relevant can also be rare and stuff. So that sounds like a pretty big promise, and I'm curious how that's going to turn out and if they really stick to that, because it seems a bit hard to me to give your rares and mythics the same kind of appeal and chase potential and draw without making them the most impactful, most powerful cards in the game, and having your game be heavier carried by the cheap commons that you can get cheap. But that's what they claimed and what they kind of working towards. So if they really stick to that and manage that, that would be really cool, because that's one of the most frustrating things with the secondary market economy in Magic, that a lot of constructed decks are extremely expensive simply because they require a lot of rares and mythics, and they are extremely expensive in the secondary market, and they are usually, especially the mythics, the most powerful cards in the game, which is why they are so sought after, and that's why they are so expensive in the secondary market. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, because normally the secondary market price of a mythic is directly correlated to its in-game relevance. So the more powerful a card is, the more it's seeing play, and the more it's being played, the more people want to buy it, and that's what drives the price up. And if the card is mythic, if it's a mythic rare, it's obviously also very rare, so there's not that many in circulation, and that means the price goes up significantly compared if it was a rare or an uncommon or common. So not sure how they want to maintain the relevance and appeal of rares and mythics without them just being heavily played and therefore chased after. But that's for them to figure out. I just hope they keep their promise, because otherwise the game would easily and quickly become as expensive as, say, Magic Standard on the secondary market, and we all know that that is pretty expensive and would create the same issues that Paper and Magic Online competitive Magic has, which is a pretty steep entry cost, and that means a pretty big barrier for people that are not super competitive or cannot just upfront a couple $100 to buy a competitive deck. And that's seemingly something that they want to try and solve by rebalancing constructed impact versus the rarity of a card, but that seems like a tricky thing to do while still maintaining kind of the point and integrity of the rarity system, but we'll see how that works out. All right, that's all I have for you guys now on Artifact. We basically know exactly how the game is being played, how the flow of the game and the goal of the game is structured, and now all we need is the first applicable beta test that we can try and get into to get more info on the game, and I hope that will start in the next couple of months. The game is supposed to drop before the end of 2018, so mid to late 2018 for PC, and sometime in 2019 it's meant to be released for Android and iOS as well, respectively. So yeah, I personally am really excited and really pumped for this game. Looking forward to it. Valve and Richard Garfield together working on a competitive card game with esports and tournament appeal is a recipe for success, so I really hope they follow through, and I can't wait to try out this game and dive into a competitive tournament scene of this size and with this kind of like competitive and price support. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. If you have any questions that are left unanswered with the video, feel free to ask in the comments. I answer as well as I can with the information that I gathered about the game. I try to explain everything as well as I could, but I might have failed in some spots, so let me know if there's still stuff unclear to you guys. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, found this interesting and entertaining, and you're as pumped about this game as I am right now. And yeah, this was Manu S with the Artifact first look and yeah, gameplay introduction. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe down below to not miss out on any future info on Artifact and content on all the other card games that I cover. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Manu S, and I'm out. Bye.